You're going.
All right. Thank you.
I want you to get going. So just go ahead and start talking.
Go. Get.
Yep, you're going. Sorry.
Well, I probably won't be able to use it now, but at least it'll be a test run. Oh. All right. My name is Michael Martin. This is the Agricultural Housing and Education Program. And what I've tried to do is design a program that can be crafted into a piece of legislature so that the government can take responsibility for its citizenry, in that we have homeless people living outdoors, and we have approximately 7,000 homeless Americans dying each year from exposure and other things related to being homeless. And this is a figure that's been bounced around. How accurate it is, would it be better if it were only 700 instead of 7,000? Who knows what the exact number really is. But we do have approximately 7 million homeless Americans in this country. 4 million of that, I'm told, are children. And they're trying to go to school, they're trying to put clothes on their backs and shoes on their feet and live outdoors and go to school. I designed this program primarily, and where I'm going to start is the infirmary part of this program. And I'm going to use the state of Oregon as an example because I think it's a perfect example of where a pilot program for this program can start. We have Mr. Smith, and we have well, I'm not a very good artist today. We have Miss Mary. Now, Miss Mary sleeps on a park bench sitting up every single night. Miss Mary, if you stop and talk to her, she is a very intelligent person who, by her own admittance, doesn't understand how she ended up the way she is now, and she has actually a college degree. So somewhere, Miss Mary snapped. Something happened to Miss Mary, we have no idea what. So Miss Mary sits out, and this is winter, summer, spring, fall. Nobody can seem to get Miss Mary to, either there isn't room in the shelter for her, or she doesn't want to come in, or there's no place else for her to go in her mind, so that's where she stays, that's where she's comfortable. Over here is Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith might as well have X's in his eyes because Mr. Smith is laying on the ground with nothing more than a tattered blanket. That's the only possession that Mr. Smith has. And Mr. Smith has suffered from chronic alcoholism and obviously malnutrition for who knows how many years it took him to deteriorate to the condition that Mr. Smith is now in. And so we wonder if he's lucid enough to make decisions regarding his own life. Is he in need of care to the degree that someone, guardianship, legally needs to have him committed somewhere where he can get well? We don't know. What I do know legally is that if Miss Mary or Mr. Smith will sign their name to consent to care, then we can take Miss Mary and Mr. Smith to a rural property out in the country here, and we have perhaps a farmhouse that has 3-4 bedrooms, old farmhouse. But these 3-4 bedrooms, we give Mr. Smith his own room, we give Miss Mary her own room. Of course, we're going to want to do this in duplicate because we're going to segregate male and female. So Miss Mary will be over here in one of the rooms in the house on this farm over here. We're going to use agriculture both as a tool for therapy and as a way to regain funding to put back into this program, okay, so that it's cost effective. And it must be owned by the state. whether that's Oregon or Washington or California, it doesn't matter. But here what we have is a postage stamp farm where, say, Miss Mary, we can have a raised flower bed here, and we can show Miss Mary how to sprout carrot seeds, for example, and how to plant carrot seeds in this raised flower bed. And think of how therapeutic that is, and it gives an end to the therapist that Miss Mary is going to need in order for us to decipher what exactly is wrong with Miss Mary and how can we make Miss Mary well again. How can we make Miss Mary as well as we can possibly make Miss Mary? Can we get her back to that person that went to college and got that degree and lived in her own house, cooked her own meals? Can we do that? Maybe if the therapist intern that we get involved with this program in Miss Mary, if we can get that therapist intern to use this vegetable bed as an excuse to interact with that therapy, then we can bring Miss Mary out of whatever funk she's in. We'll have enough time interacted and spent with Miss Mary, in addition to probably 2 hours a week that she should be spent okay. Medically, check this person out. Malnutrition. Because having lived outdoors for 6 years and been among all these people, one thing I can tell you is that malnutrition and alcoholism, either one or both, plus the stress of living outdoors and not having any place to go, this can cause depression. This can cause a form of what I think is mental illness. And these people just give up. They lose their self-esteem. They lose all kinds of their will to continue. So we have to help them. We have to help them with therapy because they have been so stressed out that, you know, it's almost as much stress as we put somebody through as if we send them over to war, and then we're supposed to help those that come back here with PTSD or whatever. Well, these people have their own form of homeless PTSD from being outside for years. And some of them didn't drink until they lost everything and became homeless. And that was their way of dealing with loss, was to drink. And once they lost everything, hey, it's just like the more I can be numb, I can be comfortable. I don't have anything anymore. I'm done. So to bring that person out into a rural setting where they're away from town, where they're away from alcohol, where they're away from drugs, and we introduce them to vegetable gardening and keeping poultry. These two things can go together, and these things can be used as therapy. And once these people begin to recover, like Mr. Smith, you know, we're going to see some success rate if we give Mr. Smith acupuncture, mushroom tea, and therapy and give him a proper diet. Mr. Smith is going to say, wow, I don't even know how I ever got there. Thank you so much. Mr. Smith is going to be rehabilitated to the point where he hasn't been for years. And we're going to see those kinds of results with all the Mr. Smiths that we are able to bring into this program. So, let's say that the state of Oregon, for example, owns 100 square miles of land over in the southwestern part of the state. And we take that 100 square miles and we figure out exactly where we can keep from cutting trees, where we can create valleys, where we can create these postage stamp farms. Because they don't have to be very big, there just has to be a whole bunch of them. And when I say a whole bunch, that means as many of them as we can make, because we will, until we get a handle on the homeless issue, we can be doing this forever. But what I think we're gonna see here is that we're going to create not only food, but revenue to self-support this program. And then we can start talking about the funding that could come from the lottery and the marijuana tax in the states where marijuana is legal. The state of California, for example, has 141,000 homeless people, okay? And that's a lot of people. The state of Oregon is in a good position. It only has 20,000 people that are homeless. That's still a lot of people. It's bigger than most small towns. I went to grade school in a town of 300 people. I try to compare that with some of the numbers that I'm hearing about the homeless. There's 1,400 homeless people living on the streets of Portland. There's 800 living on the streets of Salem. And we could go on and on. But we have a homeless population in every city in this country. We have a crisis. And we have a crisis that is so great that folks are, I'll get back to this in a minute, that folks are up in arms as to what to do about it. So let's take California, Senate Prop 54, to where the mayor of LA and San Francisco declared emergency. We're having an emergency here. So the state of California allocated $100 million for services. For the homeless. What that physically means is that $100 million came from the Fed, it came from HUD. They will continue to get that money in the following years. And this money, this block of money, all the 501(c)(3)s are able to apply then to that block of money for their grant money to continue feeding and clothing the homeless. What that means is they're able to do the shelter thing, give them free clothing, free food, whatever. But they're not creating work programs and they're not creating housing. And at the end of the day, if you're a 501(c), that means that legally it's a 60-40 split on all the funding, whether it's from the feds or whether it's from the private donors. If you donate $100 to a 501(c), $60 goes in their pocket. So we as Americans are paying taxes to create this $100 million, and the 501(c)s are getting 60% of it, and the homeless people are only seeing 40% of it in the form of food and clothing, when in fact they need work and housing. We will, at the end of the day, we will have the same population of homeless people that we did last year. And now, the city of San Francisco and the city of Los Angeles have incurred, this is 2017, they have incurred a property tax of, I think it's a quarter cent or something like that. It's something that's supposed to look really small, but what it means is that there's $57 million more every year for the next 10 years that they claim that they're going to use to solve the homeless problem and solve the homeless crisis. And what it will entail is another repeat of this here. What this program does is it takes this money away from the 501(c)s and puts it in the hands of the state, any state. And since every state every state is getting federal money for the homeless. And all that money is being used for block grants. In other words, that $100 million that was got, they're gonna get that next year, probably for the next 10 years. And they're still gonna have 141,000 people homeless in the state of California. Okay? Let's take the state of Oregon, for example. We have 20,000 homeless. We have, California is 141,000 homeless. Nebraska has 10,000 homeless. So the difference in these states and where this program comes in. The state of Oregon, in every county in the state of Oregon, and I'm using the state of Oregon because essentially the counties are really big in the state of Oregon if you look on the map. I mean, there's some big counties over here. And really, if you look at here's the mountain range that squiggles all through here that nobody's able to build on either side of it. That's great. Well, over here, there's barely even any roads, so I know that somewhere in these counties is state-owned land that is not being used for anything, and it has been owned by the state since its inception. And if that's not true, each one of these county seats own and possess large parcels of land that they have owned for one rhyme, reason, or another that they could be using for something that's being used for absolutely nothing right now. So, in addition to, we have closed schools, we have closed prisons. I'm not suggesting that we reopen them in the form of a prison. We can rehabilitate these and take some of the steel bars out and put some nice sheetrock and some ventilation in there, and we can make it a living quarters and a dormitory and an education center, because these two things both possess cafeterias and showers for the people that they could be housing. And we have many, many of them due to the budget of the schools and so forth. We have rural schools that have used to be, they went off for auction. And you could go buy a school that was out in the middle of the country somewhere that only serviced rural kids from out in the country, farm kids. I don't know if that's true or not. I do know that in the state of Colorado, where they have another, I think 60,000 homeless, they have a variety of closed schools. Just in one county, there's 5 closed schools that I know of, and that's what gave me the idea to include. All the surplus that we can find needs to come under the umbrella of this program. All the surplus land, all the surplus buildings, things that are sitting mothballed, anything and everything that we could possibly use to fund and support this program, which is owned by the state, not by a private entity, okay? So that the money coming from the feds is going to the state can go to solve the homeless problem, not to go into the bank accounts of the private 5013Cs. The federal government is responsible under the Constitution, even though it's not written in there very clearly anywhere that I can find. But the safety and welfare of the American people should be paramount under the Constitution. So when our federal government observes these kinds of numbers, and we've got 7,000 Americans die every year, period. That means they're dead. They're not coming back. They died because our federal government didn't pay attention to these numbers. It's the only reason they died. They didn't have to die. You want to talk about the Benghazi 4, that's a whole different situation. I'm talking about the American 7,000 right here. And we'll talk about the 4 people There were 4 people sleeping. Someone filled a blanket full of gasoline and threw it upon them and caught them on fire. Not once, not twice, but 4 separate individuals. And these people that did this, they had to do this with malice. They had to fill up a blanket full of gas, and one person had to hold the corner of it, the other person had to hold the other corner. They had to drape it over an individual and light him on fire, knowing that the heat would immediately take the oxygen out of his system and kill him. That's pretty brutal. So there have been people among this 7,000 that didn't die pretty. They didn't just find them on the park bench, froze to death. They died in a brutal fashion. Wasn't a joke. Wasn't drugs. Teenagers go out into the woods on a regular basis and beat up homeless people because they think it's cute, they think it's fun. So, if we take a postage stamp farm of say 40 acres, and part of it is poultry, and I'm just going to simplify this because it gets huge with the list of things that we could do. But I'm talking about people like Miss Mary and Mr. Smith. This is the infirmary. That's the infirmary part of this program. And I want poultry and vegetables. We might put a horse there for some therapy, whatever, but I want to say 12 individuals. Out of that 12 individuals, I might have 4 of them are able. And the other 8 are unable. In other words, the 8 are like Miss Mary and Mr. Smith. We're trying to bring them back to be as healthy and as happy as we possibly can. I mean, I've been a CNA, and the reason I feel so strongly about what I'm doing is that I've been a CNA in group homes, and these people were deprived of oxygen during childbirth, and that's one of the causes that we found for mental retardation. And so now that is almost obsolete. We've almost eliminated that from the planet. We certainly have much, because we've learned scientifically, medically about childbirth and how to avoid the umbilical cord being wrapped around the neck or what have you, how to avoid complications in birth. By doing that, we have grossly reduced mental retardation in this country. And the same is true if you Google search Dorothea Dix. If you Google search Dorothea Dix, back in her day, the only homeless people we had were those who had something wrong with them. They had muscular dystrophy or multiple sclerosis, or they were deaf, or they were sight impaired, or they had had complications in childbirth. We didn't understand why they were daffy and messed up like that. So these people had literally rocks thrown at them. They were abused. And Dorothea said, not in the name of God and not in the name of my country, and so she proceeded to do what she did, which is a long and drawn out complex affair of reforming our asylum systems and our prison systems for the mentally ill and those who are handicapped are concerned. And this is where we are again today, is we're back in a different area of our history, in that we don't have enough housing and we don't have enough work for our current population, and that is going to get worse. And the private sector is all the landlords. We're not building government housing anymore like we did back in the 50s. So we don't have any housing. There's no money in Section 8 housing. So the private people that have the money to build it aren't doing so simply for economic reasons. It only makes sense. They should go build condos or something and make $1 million instead of build low-income housing and rely on Section 8 renters to get their money back. That's a no-brainer. It's not their fault. So the government needs to take the surplus land that it has and build an agricultural program so that that agriculture can fund the program perpetually. In other words, how much agriculture and housing and farms, how many little postage stamp farms could we have created on land that's already owned by the government with the money that the government is giving us to take care of our homeless citizens? It makes more sense to streamline that straight to a state-owned program whereby agriculture can be produced and taught. Agricultural science is something that we need to teach people that, well, maybe they're not very good at working at McDonald's or any other type of a regular job, but maybe they'd be really good at taking care of some chickens, don't you think? On a small scale, if I had, say, 40 head here, eggs are around $3 a dozen. So if I'm getting 36 eggs a day, that's 3 dozen a day. So I made $12 a day. Oh, wait a minute, $9 maybe. Anyway, from that one little operation right there, and then in addition to, I can take half of that crop and turn that into freezer meat for these 12 individuals, or sell it. So, just an idea. But the point is, I can create psychiatric internships. Let's say somebody has a college degree, and of course, they want to be psychiatrists, and they're about there. They're about to get their license, and they need to go through some form of an internship in order to get their experience and whatnot. They can work with these people and schedule 2 hours a week per each individual. And then we have 4 physically able and mentally able people to help with the chores on this small farm and to make it more productive and to give them a temporary place to go until they can go to something more productive, like say we take one of these 40 acres and we create a dairy farm. And we put poultry on that too. Anyway, we could go on and on about agriculture. The point is, if we take land that we already own, it's owned by the state, and we call this the state agricultural housing and education program. And we legislate, we create a piece of legislature that allows all the state surplus stuff, the schools, the prisons, whatever we got that's surplus. We've got land, we've got DOT land that it's being maintained, but for what? You're mowing grass. You could let some of these folks go out there and maintain a vegetable garden. And maybe we can take those same vegetables and ship them over to Dubai and sell it to them for twice what we could get for it here, and it goes in the state's pocket, not the 501(c). And the state's pocket then in turn, eventually we create an evaluation cycle to where we're able to allow these individuals to sign up for this program. In other words, you have no excuse. The only reason people are holding up a cardboard sign is because they're honest people, they're homeless, and they're desperate, and they don't want to commit a crime. They don't want to shoplift, anything like that. Maybe they're on Social Security, and so therefore they're not legally able to take a job of any kind, really. Or maybe nobody wants to hire them because they're homeless. That seems to be the most common thing that occurs among the homeless population. Is once you're homeless, nobody wants to hire you. Nobody cares. They see a rescue mission address on your application and they won't hire you. Despite what people think, come on out here and try it. It's not as easy as it looks. So if we have this program in place, and we've exhausted all resources, we've utilized all of our closed schools, all of our closed prisons, all of our closed military bases, and we still have a population. I mean, after all, in the state of Oregon, we started with 20,000 people. That's a lot of people. You know, California, 141,000 people. Kansas and Nebraska both have 10,000. I don't know where they got this number. Who went out there and counted all those people? Well, so that's just with those 20, 60, 80. That's almost 200,000 people. So we'll call that 200,000 people. Well, there's no way that you could possibly build enough farms on any amount of land that you could possibly have to create enough agriculture, to create enough payable labor and sustainable work, which is the whole idea in doing that, and to getting them on their feet within a year's time. Perhaps they can sign up and say, oh, I want to work in this program for a year, and you know, they get their room and we feed them and give them minimum wage, that they can save because they don't have any expense. And at the same time, they're creating the agriculture to go back in to pay that program. And I keep getting off the track, and I apologize. Bear with me. This is the first time I've ever tried to do this. There are other work programs that can be created. The city of Portland has Portland. They have 1,400 people outdoors. Okay, that's a lot of people outdoors. And they need to divide some of them into this program up here to get them into the rural part of it, out into the country where they can work. In the meantime, in town, let's say there's a school that was abandoned. The schools that were abandoned got turned into dormitories and classrooms. Obviously, there's schools, we have classrooms already there. But that's where these building trades can be taught. Building trades, carpentry, electrical wiring, anything to do with erecting a building or housing or an apartment complex, which is what we would end up doing. Okay? But inside the city of Portland, all the trash can be picked up. Trees and shrubs can be planted. A whole city beautification program at $10 an hour. All these people are staying in the dormitories that we allowed them. That's the other thing. The homeless people, the able-bodied ones, can rehab these buildings that are sitting vacant into their own housing and get paid for doing that, so that they have sustainable work through this program. It's all part of this program. City beautification programs, Your farming programs, your agricultural programs, all of it falls under this umbrella. So that $100 million that they're giving each year to each state, roughly, my numbers are bad. You can come up with some different numbers, but they still spell the same thing. We're paying tax dollars and we're not getting anything for our money. And the American people are suffering to the tune of these kinds of numbers. And how many administrations have we been through? We can go back to Ronald Reagan. He's supposed to be the cause of part of this. He let all these people out of the mental hospitals. They weren't dangerous to themselves or to others. Well, we need to look at that and see if these people are lucid enough, mentally capable enough to be making decisions for themselves, to be able to fend for themselves, to clean themselves, to bathe themselves, to house themselves, whatever. We need to figure out how come we have so many people up there. And that's my whole idea. And if you want to support this idea, I mean, this is the first thing that I'm posting on my YouTube channel, folks. And the reason that I'm posting it is because I've opened that YouTube channel and I've been dying to use it. And I want to figure out what that's all about. Somebody downloaded a video about having done something, interacted with a homeless person and claimed to have made a lot of money out of it. And anyway, I don't know how they did it and I don't really care. All I know is and that is www.crowdrise.com/American Homeless United. It gets all run together. You'll see an ugly picture of yours truly on an exit ramp, Donaldson Pike over by the airport there in Nashville. I spent about a year in those woods that are just over my shoulder in the picture. And a friend of mine took that picture of me on the 4th of July in the rain. But that was only my second year being homeless. And that's where I began to learn how to physically survive. I mean, you have to survive. Nobody's going to help you. None of these 501(c)(3)s are going to help you. They're not. It's a quagmire. And either you have to be very creative to get out of it. You have to be very, I don't know. You can have all the tenacity and intelligence in the world, and you're going to stay homeless if you don't have any money. These people are financially crippled, okay? They are financially disabled. And we are in a modern world by which it's pay up or get out. And when you take a city like Los Angeles and you have all these homeless people, well, there are no woods for them to go off into, and even if there were, gone are the days of Daniel Boone. Property is owned by everybody. There is no more homesteading. There is no more places to go. And these cities are, I'm going to do a follow-up video, and in fact this is just one of a series of videos that I'm going to be doing on this issue in an effort to get support for my efforts and to lobby for the legislation that will save this country hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars. And also, hopefully, my goal is that that same program will create enough of an agricultural export that it will help our country's economy. It'll help it anyway because it's going to put a bunch of people back to work. Or to work, while they can think of something else to do. Go back to college, go to work, whatever. These people are surrounded by concrete. There's no place for them to go. and to tell them that they can sleep on this sidewalk one day and then come along and chase them off and destroy their possessions. And I've seen them step on eyeglasses, I've seen them dump pills out, medications that people needed either for epilepsy or something else. The atrocities that the public doesn't hear when it comes to the homeless, it needs to stop. It needs to stop yesterday, last week, last month. I'm tired of hearing about people getting killed and people finding froze to death. I'm tired of hearing it. There's no excuse. Those people, when you go to the cemetery in Washington, in Arlington, and you look out over those headstones, I can assure you that not one of those people laying underneath those headstones had any intention of defending a constitution that allowed their own people to be treated the way they are today. And it needs to stop. It just needs to stop. I don't care if they name a park bench after me. I don't care if they give me the Congressional Medal of Freedom or whatever. I don't care. I just want it to stop. These people are suffering. And if you've been a caregiver and you know in your heart that programs, group homes, and work programs have been created for people that are debilitated, and the philosophy behind them was so that these people can live with dignity to the greatest degree possible. That was our whole entire philosophy in one of the programs that I worked in. Now, why can't we have the same attitude toward our nation's homeless that we have for our mentally retarded, who are only victims of complications at childbirth, which we figured out, hey, that's how come those people got that way. And our medical science has allowed us over the last 50 years to almost eliminate mental retardation from the population. So let's see how much science and how much social ingenuity we can use to eliminate 7 million homeless people. Let's get these kids scholarships that are outdoors, sleeping in vans, sleeping in tents, trying to go to school. And their folks are stealing cans of sardines to eat so that their kids can have the rest of the food, some of them. That I know for a fact. So, but this is my fundraising site. This is a political platform. I'm also at Gmail. Okay? So if you can't get this to come up for you, I'm also at Gmail. American Homeless United at Gmail. All of the money that I'm going to be raising on this is going to go toward the cause. I mean, I have to buy stuff. I have to go places. I have to see people. I have to try to drive this idea home because these people don't have homes. And winter's coming. We live in a society that seems to think it's okay that people can sleep outside as long as they don't freeze to death. I don't happen to think so. Anyway, my name is Michael Martin. I hope you tune in for my next episode. I promise it'll be a lot more sophisticated than this one. But here's where we're at. We can adapt agriculture, government surplus, federal funding, tax dollars and lottery money. They promised us a better school system when they made it legal to have lotteries. I haven't seen the schools change much. I've seen a whole bunch of them close though. So I kind of wonder about that. In the meantime, roughly, do your homework. Peel the onion back. Take a look. Open your eyes. These people are not going to get up and go build them a house out in the woods. They're going to be homeless if we don't help them. And they're our fellow countrymen. They don't deserve where they are. They probably don't know how they got there. If they do, it's not their fault. And even if it is, they're there. We owe it to them to help them. Thank you.